Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Levinson, and I'm the director of the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs and a member of the faculty here at the School of Management. On behalf of Dean Ted Snyder and myself, I'd like to welcome you to this Leaders Forum. The Leaders Forum is one of Yale School of Management's preeminent speaker series. It brings a few leaders from across all sectors to Evans Hall each year to engage with the Yale community about the challenges and opportunities of leadership. We have an exciting guest today, but before we start, there are a couple ground rules. I want to remind the audience that Yale policy allows for peaceful and quiet protest, but does not allow for anyone to disrupt the speaker or make it difficult for the audience to hear. Also, the event is being live streamed on YouTube. Now, it's my honor to introduce one of the most well-known journalists of our time, Bob Woodward. Although he needs no introduction, Bob has been a fixture at the Washington Post for the past 46 years and has written 18 books, all of which have been New York Times bestsellers, and 12 of which have been #1 national bestsellers. He's been awarded 2 Pulitzer Prizes. Please give me a hand in welcoming Yale's own Bob Woodward.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. My name is Romy Hussein, and I'm a second-year MBA student here at the Yale School of Management. Although he needs no introduction, our guest today, President Pervez Musharraf, was the 10th president of Pakistan, serving in the role from 2001 until 2008. He is also a 4-star general who served his nation as Chief of Army Staff, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Minister of Defense. The Yale School of Management prides itself on being the most international business school, and today's event truly showcases this unique competitive advantage. With a mission statement to educate leaders for business and society, today is a remarkable opportunity to engage with the newsmakers who will one day fill our history books. It's an honor to welcome President Pervez Musharraf.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Well, we've got the floor here. Thank you very much for coming to Yale. There's much discussion in America about universities being in the business of kind of confrontation or controversy avoidance. And given your career, you know about controversy.
Yes, indeed.
So you will not shy away from the discussion of the issues of the past and the present. I know, and I think to start, it can safely be said that you are the only person in the room here who staged a coup. And some here may plan.
For Pakistan, I'm proud of it.
Yes. What was it like to stage a coup? How did you feel? I know you've written and talked a little bit about it, but I'm interested in were you frightened? Were you sure? Was it a guaranteed thing?
No, I think if I tell you what exactly happened when I was in the air, I was dismissed, but then I was coming from Sri Lanka, and the army acted on its own to restore me in my position. When my aircraft landed at Karachi, the door opened at the gangway, the corps commander and division commander were there, and they said, "Sir, you are in charge of Pakistan." So I mean,
So they made
imagine
you
my
do it.
feeling. Yes, partially yes.
It was their coup, not yours.
Well, everything. They say in the army, the commander or the leader is responsible for all that happens or does not happen in his command.
So in your nearly decade of being in charge of Pakistan, what was your biggest accomplishment? If you pull back and say, what's the one main thing I did that was important?
I think I gave confidence to the people of Pakistan. I raised the stature of Pakistan in the world, and I carried out development of the country and the welfare of the people. These were my successes.
What was your biggest mistake as you look back on it?
Well, I think my biggest mistake, which took me down in 2007, my popularity being about 80% in March 2007, and it went down. What I would like to point out...
That's even lower than Trump now, isn't it?
Well, no comments on his popularity. But what I would like to say is that sometimes a mistake may not be a mistake, but you do something which has caused maximum damage to you. And it did. So what I did in 2007 in dismissing the Chief Justice was not at all a mistake. It was absolutely correct. And with hindsight, I can say it was correct. But it led to my ouster, more than my ouster, it led to the destabilization of Pakistan, which happened subsequently.
Doesn't that give democracy a bad name, though, for the leader, the president, to dismiss the Chief Justice?
No, sir, that is not the case. In March 2007, I moved exactly according to the Constitution of Pakistan. There were charges of corruption and nepotism against the Chief Justice, and this was given by the Prime Minister of Pakistan as a reference to me. And according to the Constitution of Pakistan and the law of Pakistan, it has to be referred to a Supreme Judicial Council, which composition of which is also laid down in the Constitution of Pakistan. I exactly did that, and I handed it over to the Supreme Judicial Council, which was absolutely legal and constitutional.
But it led to your demise.
Yes, because there was a lawyers' movement, and that lawyers' movement got politicized. The political parties entered the fray, and I did not do anything about it other than I thought the Supreme Judicial Council will give its judgment. But unfortunately, they did not, and they handed over the case to a larger bench of the Supreme Court, which was actually unconstitutional. And that Supreme Court bench gave a negative judgment. So in the overall context, even in hindsight now, I think I did a very right thing and most constitutional. But it led to negative results for Pakistan and for myself. Therefore, it shouldn't have been done.
In talking to President George W. Bush and President Obama and the intelligence chiefs, the one chief complaint they have about Pakistan during your period is what they call this hedging strategy of you help the United States in the anti-terrorist campaign, which you did in a very real way. And at the same time, Pakistan, some people in the military and the intelligence service were helping the Taliban. So you were on both sides. Why?
I would beg to differ there. Let me say that one has to see on the strategic aspect whether we were together with the United States, and that is to fight terrorism, that is to defeat Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, and there should be no doubt, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind in the United States, least of all in President Bush's mind and Secretary of State Colin Powell's mind, that I was very sincerely and genuinely fighting the terrorists Al-Qaeda and Taliban. However, when you come to the tactical level of handling There could be differences in tactical handling of situations, and that should not be taken as any problem between the two countries. Every country has its own interests and its own ways of dealing with it. And may I also say that at that time I used to say, please don't micromanage for us. We know the environment much better than you. So don't do micromanagement. We are together at the macro level.
So it's your way of
Micromanagement,
saying,
yeah.
yes, you were playing both sides.
No,
No,
not at all.
Well, when you say at the tactical level and as president
Right.
and as
There were
charge of
different-
the military, if somebody down the line was doing something tactically that you didn't like, you could have stopped it.
No, it was genuinely whatever was being done was known, and it was in Pakistan's interest. There was no secret about it. We were following our own interests, and we used to generally give it out.
Did you, when you were leader, and even now, does Pakistan want a unified Afghanistan? Do they want the Taliban really defeated, or do they fear that if you have a unified Afghanistan, we are fighting this war and have been fighting it since right after 9/11, that you will get a Pashtun leader who's strong, who's sympathetic to India, your longtime adversary?
No, I don't think Pashtun leader would not be sympathetic towards India. India has always been supporting the Northern Alliance in the near past. And Northern Alliance was all the minorities, the Uzbeks, Tajiks, Hazaras, and the Pashtuns were all Taliban. And the Pashtuns have common geography, common history, common culture, common religion with Pakistan. So therefore, I don't think a Pashtun or a government will be anti-Pakistan government. So therefore, I would say the blunder of the United States actually at the moment is that they are trying to run Afghanistan with a minority Panjshiri-dominated government who are 8% of Afghanistan. They should, if they want to run Afghanistan in a balanced way, they must make sure that the ethnic division of the government is properly looked after, and their Pakhtuns should be more than 50%.
And so you wouldn't worry about a really strong leader in Afghanistan?
No, not at all. Why should we worry? In fact, India and Pakistan should both stand off from Afghanistan.
The nightmare for a president of the United States, George W. Bush, Obama, now President Trump, is that there's a terrorist attack from the region there, and that it's postmarked Pakistan, that people have been trained in the tribal areas, that, and do you understand that this is what they're trying to stop?
The way terrorism is going and the way whatever is happening in that region, anything is possible. Terrorists, there are terrorists in Pakistan, there is no doubt about it. But mainly their base of terrorists which are going around the world, which means Al-Qaeda or ISIS or Taliban, is Afghanistan. However, they have links, certainly they have links in Pakistan. So something happens, and if there was some training going on from Pakistan, that shouldn't infer that Pakistan is the rogue country. That is where we go wrong. It is possible there is terrorism, there are terrorists around, so we can expect anything happening which has some links with Pakistan.
But it drove the American presidents crazy that they would see satellite photos of truckloads of Taliban fighters going across the border from Pakistan into Afghanistan to kill American soldiers.
Well, sir, I think now that we are getting into a discussion of this, we should also know that how did all this get introduced? I mean, in '79, when the Soviets came into Afghanistan, United States wanted to stop expansion of communism, and it was in Pakistan's interest that we stop the two-front threat that we had. Initially, we used to look only eastwards. Now we had a two-front threat. Therefore, there was a collusion between Pakistan and United States, and we decided to evict the Soviets. And what we did was to initiate a jihad in Afghanistan. Why did we initiate a jihad? To draw mujahideen from the world. And about 25,000 mujahideen came from Morocco to Indonesia, from every country of the Muslim world. So we trained them, we armed them, and sent them in.
And threw the Soviets out.
To put the Soviets out. And we trained and armed Taliban and put them inside. Now all these mujahideen and Taliban were our heroes, including Osama bin Laden, sir. He came in the 80s. Now, these people are there, and it is in our interest to throw the Soviets out. But what happens after we won a victory in 89? What happened after that? The decade of 90s is extremely important. United States leaves the place high and dry. They just leave and walk out of the area. What happened then? Mayhem, sir. Every ethnic group fighting each other. Pashtuns divided into 10, 12 groups. Panjshiri separate, Hazara separate, Uzbek separate.
So you worried that the United States would run away again? Is that
So at that time, what I'm trying to indicate is all that happened, this religious militancy got introduced because of our common action, which appeared right at that time. And then in the 90s, leaving the place and allowing a vacuum for 10 years in Afghanistan, which led to the rise of Al-Qaeda, and then the unified Taliban under Mullah Umar in 1996. And that was an ideal environment for planning any terrorist activity in a vacuum, in a void. And that is how 9/11 got planned. All these Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and everyone who got caught in Pakistan were there in Afghanistan in that 10-year period. They planned everything.
But what United States presidents have tried to do then is stop the Taliban.
Now,
And to make sure that there's no, that Afghanistan, Pakistan is not a platform for another attack on the U.S. homeland, which is #1 job of an American president. You understand that?
yes, absolutely. I think that is very valid and genuine. And now, who should do the job? Who should do the job in Afghanistan? Now, expecting Pakistan or throwing the blame on Pakistan is not correct. You can't say you're not doing enough. We are doing more than enough in Pakistan. We have suffered about 1,000 casualties of military alone, leave aside about 70,000 civilians. So we are bearing the brunt of terrorism. So what are we not doing enough? We have launched an operation called Zarb-e-Azab in North Waziristan, and we have evicted their nerve center of the Taliban from North. This was the center, their communication center, their indoctrination center.
That's all true, but I remember asking President Obama about that because he was saying Pakistan has stepped up the effort, and then I said, but not enough, and he said, exactly, they want more from you, and the question is, why couldn't you give them that extra 25%?
Yes, sir. The answer that I gave you, may I repeat that United States has interests, and they have sensitivities, and we understand that United States is a superpower. But may I also say that lowly countries like Pakistan also have their interests and sensitivities. Now, there is a sensitivity in Afghanistan of Pakistan, and that is Indian involvement there and causing us trouble in Balochistan through Afghanistan. And I know it for sure because I know I have seen documents, I have seen everything. Now, why that is not being stopped? So why do you expect Pakistan to assist in everything? What does Pakistan do if there is terrorism coming from Afghanistan into Pakistan? They will counter it in Afghanistan. How do they do that? If the Panjshiris or Uzbeks are with India, who is with us?
Okay. Now,
So we get into a proxy war situation like that.
okay, fair enough, but as you look at the last decade, U.S. policy has, if you will, tilted toward India, it seems. Do you agree with that that's happened?
Now,
And the question is, how does Pakistan become more relevant to U.S. policy? In other words, from the U.S.-centric point of view, and I realize it's selfish, how does Pakistan do more for the United States?
we should do more for each other, really. We must, I think, as a basis, we must understand each other's national interests and also understand each other's sensitivities. I think that will lead to trust, to maintaining of trust. But other than that, what should Pakistan do?
On the trust scale, though, it's not high these days.
Not at all high, it's very low, in fact.
That's the headline.
But what I want to say is that Pakistan has its own significance, sir, to United States. And may I point out 4 of them. Number 1 is the geography of Pakistan. We are located and surrounded in the west by Iran, in the north by Afghanistan, in the northeast by China, and in the east by India. Each one of these 4 are of special significance to the United States. So how come we in the center can be ignored? Number 1 point. Second point, that we are the strongest Muslim country of the world. And when you are dealing with Muslims, then Pakistan has a role to play. Third point, we are the only country which are on good terms with Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia. By the way, if anyone knows the Muslim world, these 3 have never been very friendly with each other. Pakistan is the link with all 3. So we can bring that kind of harmony in the Muslim world. And lastly, may I say that fighting terrorism itself, we are on the front line. We have to be together to fight and defeat terrorism.
So if President Trump were here and we had him on sodium pentothal, truth serum, and he couldn't tweet, what would you say to him he should do to renew and reestablish, reaffirm those relations with Pakistan, which you acknowledge the trust factor is low? What should he do?
He should, first of all, decide to get involved on the dispute between India and Pakistan, and the main one, obviously, being the Kashmir dispute. He should get involved to resolve it. Secondly, the Afghan issue. Now, in Afghanistan, again, the problem area is, again, India-Pakistan relations. And what India is doing in Afghanistan and how we are countering that. We should both stay out of Afghanistan. But it cannot be a one-sided affair where you favor India and you get India more involved in Afghanistan at the cost of Pakistan being ousted. While Pakistan has geographic links and all the links with Afghanistan, India has no links at all. So I think this is a wrong policy. That's what I would like to explain to him.
Do you think there's a chance he'll do that?
Sorry?
Trump. Do you think that President Trump will be more favorable?
I think so, because when a person is uninitiated on these subjects, when maybe he... no, I don't mean it in that...
You're smiling.
I mean, when let me put it this way, that he's starting with an absolutely clear slate. A clean slate where the slate has to be filled. I mean, he has to understand what is India-Pakistan relations, what is Kashmir, what is India-Afghan relations, etc. So I think here is an opportunity where he can be molded into action or a better understanding of this.
So in one of the coming weekends, instead of going to Mar-a-Lago for the weekend, he should come to Islamabad.
Yes.
And sit down and learn the situation and do one of his deals.
Well, I think that won't be taken well in India. So therefore, we have to really be balanced. This is a very sensitive issue between India and Pakistan. We started.
Are you too obsessed with India? Is Pakistan too obsessed with India?
We have always been upset, but I think it was me, having fought wars against them, that I was the only one who was moving towards peace. I was the only one who dealt with the BJP government of Prime Minister Vajpayee, and then the Congress government of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And I found them both extremely sincere, extremely flexible towards going for solution towards peace. And therefore, we were moving forward towards peace. That is what we achieved. But that was on a bilateral level. You can't, they say that you can't clap with one hand. Now the situation is different. I mean, Pakistan cannot be expected to clap with one hand. From the other side, there is aggression, total aggression. That will only result in more aggression.
But the Indian economy gets stronger and the Pakistani economy gets weaker.
I do understand that, yes, yes, indeed. I mean, we have examples all over the world. Economy is the backbone of everything. We have to do well. But I know for sure, because of the 10 years that I spent, what I took over in 1999, when we were technically a defaulted state economically. And within about 5 years, we became one of the N11 countries of the world, the next 11 economically vibrant countries of the world. Our economic growth was about average 7%. In fact, in 2005, it was 8.4%. So we grew. How did that happen? The same resources, the same everything. So I have no doubt in my mind, with proper leadership, correct governance in Pakistan, we can do better, if not as well as India.
Okay, now 6 years ago, we learned that Osama bin Laden was in Abbottabad, in Pakistan, where the military academy is. Did you go to that military academy?
Yes, sir.
You
I was
did?
there for 2.5 years.
And how did this happen? I think 2 years while you were president, Osama bin Laden was in that house. What gives here? You can understand the suspicion and, let's be gentle, the curiosity about how this happened. Why?
Yeah, well, I don't think it was complicity. It was negligence. And I'm reasonably sure about it. Because when we say...
what makes you sure?
Firstly, that if he was there for 5 years, when I calculated when it was said, 2 years were in my tenure. And one thing I am very sure of, that I didn't know. So I am very sure of this fact that I did not know that he was there. Now, whether anyone believes it or not.
But if you had known, you could have called your friend George W. Bush, the president, and say, I've got a Christmas present for you.
Yes,
right?
Certainly. If I knew...
Would you have done that?
I would have definitely told him, whether it was a Christmas present or anything, but I would have told him.
Now, philosophies. President Obama has said when in 2009, when his first inaugural, he said, American strength comes from its humility and restraint. A year ago, a colleague and I at the Washington Post were interviewing then candidate Donald Trump. And we cited that and said, do you agree? And Trump said, I quote him directly, he said, real power is, I don't like to use this word, but real power is fear. Is he right? Is real power fear, or is it humility and restraint? Hard question, I realize.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the right answer. I think when you are the stronger side, real power would be humility. When you are the weaker side, the real power is put the fear of God in the stronger one's mind, that we won't take any nonsense from you. So it's both ways, cuts both ways, I think. In our case, in the region, I've been telling Indians, the Indian Prime Minister, you are a bigger country, much bigger force, so the accommodation should come from your side. All the positive connotations of large-heartedness, magnanimity will be given to you. But if we, Pakistan, being the weaker country, smaller country, does anything, all the negative connotations will come to it. So therefore, I think we have to balance out relations. Interstate relations are not that simple. But may I suggest to United States, yes, indeed, humility would be power.
Do you anticipate going back to Pakistan and running for or seeking office again?
I haven't decided really. I coined a term, Pakistan first. That is my term, and if at all I think that I can contribute something to Pakistan, I will do it. I will go back. But it is not for my personal ambition. I don't have any ambitions of elevating myself to be the Prime Minister again or anything of the sort. But I want Pakistan to recover from the doldrums that it is in at the moment.
Can the democratic experiment in Pakistan continue?
It has to continue.
You want it to?
Yes, absolutely. The whole army wants it that way. But may I suggest that it has to be tailored to our environment, number one, and it has to have checks and balances against misperformance. Like at the moment, a government and a prime minister is misperforming, and Pakistan is going down. There is no check. There is no check. He will continue. He will continue doing that. So we have to have checks and balances, and in my time there were. There was an Article 58(2)(b).
And he was the one you overthrew effectively.
Yes.
And now he's back.
Yes.
And you're not.
I am not, yes.
How do you feel about that?
Yes, I have always had my feet on the ground. I have never flown in the skies. So therefore my fall, I did not really felt my fall. I didn't feel my fall. I am the same man. I always remain the same. Even as the president, I had same friends, I had sincere friends, and my outlook towards life, my attitude towards people was exactly the same as it was before I became the president, after I became the president, and even now. So therefore, I'm the same person. I'm a very natural person. I don't act.
So how's he doing?
Who, the Prime Minister?
Yes.
I mean, he's doing miserably, I think.
What grade would you give him?
Great.
This is an academic environment. If I may say, teaching here, obsessed with grades.
Well, I believe his responsibility, of any leader's responsibility, is to the state and the people. That is how I see it. The welfare and development of the state, the development of the state and welfare of the people. These are two responsibilities that any leader has to have, and we have to gauge that. Or if you take these two, you see the welfare of the people, their poverty alleviation, employment generation, education, health, all failures. So I'll give him failing marks in all. You take development of the state. What is development of the state? It's economy, and we are an agrarian society, agriculture, water management, energy, industry, telecommunication, IT, communication infrastructure, all failures again. So how many marks should I give him, I think, overall?
So all Fs across the board.
I think so.
Now, drone strikes. President Obama, for years, used lots of drone strikes in the tribal area with a kind of acquiescence by the Pakistani government, not an all-in strategy on the part of the Pakistanis. And when President Zardari in Pakistan first, when he was in office in 2009, after you left, the CIA chief, Michael Hayden, came to see him about drone strikes. And it was interesting. Zardari said, "You Americans worry about collateral damage, civilians being killed." And he said, "I don't." Is that right? should the leader of a country say, I'm really not worried about civilian casualties from these drone strikes?
It's a pity if he said that. I mean, that may be his...
He said that. It was in one of my books.
Well, he must have said that in his private, yes. Otherwise, I think I really pity this statement of his. Obviously, everyone worries about the people, and collateral damage is a main concern. But may I add that in my time at least, which I knew, there were about 8 or 9 strikes only in those 7, 8 years. Because we evolved a strategy that the drones are used to locate the target. And once the target is located, we strike, the Pakistan forces. So we asked the United States to develop our strike capability. And therefore, we got helicopter gunships. We improved them. We developed a night fighting capability of night flying, night fighting.
But they didn't give you drones, did they, or control?
They did not. Now, I asked for availability of the Hellfire missiles, because drones can take a photograph, but then they should be able to strike also, especially fleeting targets. That is done with the Hellfire missiles. So I had asked drones to be given to Pakistan. That was not done. So therefore, whenever there was a fleeting target, the United States took those on themselves. Now that is where sensitivity of violation of our sovereignty came in, and the people got against United States.
And they got upset at you and your successors also about it.
Well, in those days, then there was indiscriminate use of drones in Pakistan. Every month there used to be a few drone attacks, and they say there was much more collateral damage then. In our time, I don't think there was much collateral damage at all.
Now, Pakistan has nuclear weapons, correct?
Yes.
And when you were president, did you have sole authority to use those weapons if you deemed it necessary and essential for the national security of Pakistan?
For the first year, yes, I did. But then I established custodial controls, and we first of all created a strategic planning division called the SPD, where we took over the financing and the developmental control from the scientists on to this strategic planning division. We raised a corps of about 20,000 people, an army corps, to hold these assets. So therefore, we developed a total custodial controls in development and holding of these assets. Now the decision to use, we created a National Command Authority, NCA, chaired by the President, but it had the Prime Minister, a number of important ministers, and the military chiefs.
So you'd take a vote?
No, I don't think it's a vote there, but we never had the occasion of deciding on its use.
But even at that point, you could, if you felt Pakistan was being attacked, say by India, who has nuclear weapons, you could use them on your own say-so. Is that correct?
Not alone. I would certainly have called the NCA and discussed with them. And,
suppose there wasn't time.
Well, I mean, I certainly was considered, my voice had much more weight than anyone else's. So to that extent, I agree with you. I could have influenced the use of the weapon myself. But that doesn't mean that I get up in the morning and I say, use the atom bomb and throw it somewhere. That is not the case. I created an organization, and I had to go to the NCA. So there was a check on me also. So I think the custodial controls that
But it sounds like custodial control is a nice term, but in a practical sense, you still had the say.
Well,
because I ask about this because in the American system, the president has that authority.
Right. Yes.
It is astonishing, but the Constitution gives the executive authority
To the president.
to the one person, not a committee, not the National Security Council.
Right. Now, there's a lot of difference. I mean, please don't compare Pakistan or even India with the Soviet Union, erstwhile Soviet Union and United States. You talk of finger on the trigger, etc. Nobody had any finger on the trigger in Pakistan, India.
Did you ever come close to thinking you would have to use those weapons?
Yes, I think in 2002, when there was an attack on the Indian Parliament, and the blame was given to the government, and I kept telling the Indian government that this is not government-sponsored. But yes, indeed, there were some non-state actors who've done this. But they brought their entire armed forces onto our borders and threatened to attack Pakistan. So one was to succumb. That didn't go well with my nature. So I amassed my armed forces onto the border. So for 10 months, we were on eyeball-to-eyeball contact.
Very dangerous situation.
Yeah, on one of the nights they
United
decided
States.
to, I came to know, I was told that they are going to attack across the border, not entire war, but in the Kashmir border. So that was dangerous. So one had to sometimes think at night if that situation came.
Did it keep
how do
you
I
up?
handle it?
Did
Yes.
It did?
Yeah, because one can't imagine, I mean, nobody can ever imagine using a nuclear device. What we are talking of, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are maybe 5 kilotons. Here, the ones India tested or we tested are maybe 10 times or 20 times more powerful than those.
Somebody told me now that Pakistan has 100 nuclear weapons, maybe more. Isn't that too many?
Well, to an extent, I would agree that even one is too many, because even using one against anyone is too much. I think if anyone uses a nuclear bomb against, he should commit suicide after that. He should leave the world, I think, himself. But, I think the targeting policy, there is a targeting policy and there is a employment policy that we have created ourselves. And according to that, it is not too many.
But it's scary, isn't it?
Yes.
That has to, I mean, of all the things you did as president, that must have made you tremble.
Well, yes, any sane person would tremble at the thought of getting into a possibility of using it.
And you have them as a deterrent.
We have it as a deterrent, but I have a different theory of deterrence. My theory of deterrence is not the possession of force, is not deterrence. The intent and the resolve to use that force is the real deterrence. So the enemy should know that maybe I'm mad enough to use them. That is deterrence.
This is the Nixon madman theory.
Well, you were against him, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, in American politics, going back to Nixon, there's been a lot of hate. Nixon, when he resigned, talked about hate, and when you hate your enemies, you destroy not your enemies, but yourself. And one of the great spy novelists, Graham Greene, has said, he said, don't despise your enemies. They have a case.
Yes.
You need to listen. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think any dispute needs flexibility to solve in understanding. One shouldn't be. If you think you are right all the time, that is exactly what is arrogance. That is arrogant behavior. You must understand the other side also has a point of view, and it may be more logical than yours. So therefore, one has to view international affairs, and where issues like using of nuclear devices is involved is a very, very serious issue, and one should approach problems with an open mind, with sincerity and flexibility, that others' points of views must be heard.
Listening to you talk like that would make me think you would have made a very aggressive effort to make peace with India,
Yes, I did.
and you failed.
I failed
Why?
ultimately. Well, I think I succeeded to a great extent in that we had three problems that we confronted: the Sir Creek, Siachen, and Kashmir. On the Sir Creek, in my tenure that the two navies of India and Pakistan jointly carried out a joint survey or demarcating the disputed area on land and extending into the EEZ, the exclusive economic zone, into the sea. And we identified the disputed area. On Siachen, we identified the lines of withdrawal of both the forces. So it was almost done. I mean, we could sign a deal any day. On Kashmir, we were working on a 4-point agenda, which was my brainchild, really. And we were moving forward on drafting an agreement on Kashmir. So therefore, that way, it was success all the way.
Except not
the
all the-
final act.
Yeah.
Yes, may I?
So we lost by 1 point.
Yes,
We still
that was the
lost.
point. That was
Yeah.
the point. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had to come to Pakistan in 2007, and we had decided that we will sign at least 1 or 2 deals. And he didn't come. Maybe he didn't come because my popularity had gone down, and maybe he thought the next government should come. But then we reversed it was a lost, fleeting opportunity which we could have grasped, and we lost.
What did you think of the Iraq War that George W. Bush launched in 2003, which we still are struggling with in various forms?
Yeah, I think I don't see that positively at all, other than that there were no weapons of mass destruction, etc. The way the military plan was executed, the military strategy involved in the invasion of Iraq was, I see it in a very different way. That in Iraq, Saddam Hussein was a hated man. The people of Iraq didn't like him. He was a dreaded man. And he happened to be the center of gravity of Iraq. So I always thought, as a military man, to approach the problem, approach an operation in Iraq, was to cordon off Baghdad, where he was inside, and land your airborne division in the airport, which is outside Iraq, and then send commando teams inside to locate this one man who is the center of gravity and pick him up from there. And the people would have assisted. So there was no need of double pincers, of armor pincers going all over the place, and Navy firing missiles, the air missiles coming in, the whole world watching these missiles landing in.
So you would have done it covertly?
It would have been overt, but in a commando action. It needed a discrete commando action.
And of course,
against one man, not against...
Saddam worried about this obsessively and worked to protect himself, supposedly. The last question, you're 73, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? I'm a year older and have done what I've do for decades, for 46 years. And sometimes I worry, to be honest with you, that I might be stuck in time. That what happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s is not now. And do you sometimes feel that maybe you're stuck in time?
As far as Pakistan is concerned,
Yes, sir.
no. No, I don't feel that way.
You don't? You think you're
yes.
just as relevant?
I think so. Because Pakistan's society, Pakistan's political environment is totally personality-oriented. And people follow personalities. And I think one can play a role, yes.
So you're going back and you're going to run?
I want a change, all right. I don't necessarily have to run for anything. But I have to create a political force which will win in the next elections.
It's a big job.
Very big.
We're going to stop with my questions now, and we'll let the audience ask the right questions. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have, Gordon Liddy has supplied microphones for this afternoon. See, you're too young. They don't know who Gordon Liddy was. He was one of, you do, don't you? He was one of the Watergate operatives. Here,
Okay.
sir.
Hey, I'm an international student from Pakistan, so it's nice to see you in a different environment. So my question is, do you have any thoughts on the current state of civil-military intelligence relations in Pakistan, particularly who makes the decisions and the balance of power among them? Should that change? How should that change? How has that changed since you've been in power?
Quite clearly, decisions on national issues are made by the government, because we must understand that it is the cabinet which takes decisions, the prime minister and the cabinet. Never has the army chief called a cabinet conference or been present in a cabinet conference. So the decisions are always there. However, when the government is not really performing well or not governing well, then the policies which should emerge from the top, from the government and down to everyone, you've spoken about intelligence, unless the intelligence organizations are given policies and their strategy is also controlled from the top, then they are only there to execute those. Then they make their own policies. They start making their own policies. That is where we see that they are doing everything themselves, because probably policies are not flowing from the top. So that is the defect of weakness of government, I would say.
But you were saying there's certain tactical things that sometimes go on below, at the low level, that can't be controlled from the top.
Tactical things should never be controlled from the top. That's not a very good way of governance. If your policies are clear and you strategize clearly, the micromanagement must be left to the organization. That is the best
But
way of-
here, as you acknowledge on the issue of anti-terrorist support and also supporting the Taliban one way or another, you've got a policy that's contradictory. So wouldn't it, if you're down there and you're a captain, what's the policy? I think, isn't it, gee, you can do what you want?
No, there was never a contradictory as far as we are concerned on Afghanistan. There was never a contradictory. I used to make policies from the top, and every institution, every intelligence organization, there were weekly conferences, and once a month I used to head that conference. There was no question that any one of the intelligence organization was creating new policies or following their own line of action.
But things happened that were contrary to that policy. You acknowledge.
Yes, I would know it, absolutely. I would know it, and they would not.
Well, then something isn't working.
I mean, I can safely say they dared not do anything against my policy. I mean, they knew that if ISI is not doing anything, they will be out the next morning.
Okay. At my newspaper, we have an unofficial motto, and that is that all good work is done in defiance of management.
Not in the
And
army.
it sounds like that's the way it is in the Pakistani military and
No.
intelligence service.
There's no way. No way. Nobody defies the top.
Okay, here, this woman here.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here. I know we spoke a little bit about economic progress in Pakistan, especially when it comes to sort of the power balance in the region. I have a question about the Pakistan-China economic corridor. On the one hand, it can be argued that it's incredibly important for Pakistan to develop, but on the other hand, it's also pushing Indian American interests together. So as you think about sort of the economic and the strategic balance of that policy, what are your views on the Pakistan-China economic corridor?
One has to, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we have to see it from our point of view. Pakistan's point of view.
Tell them what the Pakistani-China corridor is, because it's a big deal.
Yes.
30 to 40 billion dollars committed Chinese money invested in Pakistan, right?
Yes. But from our point of view, the biggest gain to Pakistan, from our point of view, I see it from that point of view, is if Gwadar can be converted into a container terminal. And this is totally an economic connotation, because Gwadar is a port which a few ports of the world are deep sea ports and a more than 19-meter draft. So this is a natural deep sea port which can accept biggest container ships of the world. So if we can convert this into a container terminal, the other is there is 6 months to 1 year waiting period for ship repair. So this is outside the Strait of Hormuz, where we can have a ship repair facility, and Pakistan has cheap labor. So converting Gwadar into a ship repair facility and a container terminal for the whole region is the real economic benefit for Pakistan. Other than, of course, the trade route to China and to Central Asian republics, especially Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. This is the value to Pakistan. And if economic value is coming to Pakistan, why should we be overly concerned with what others are thinking? And also, may I say, in this respect, Pakistan, United States, yes, Pakistan relations with the United States is very important to Pakistan. Now, that must not be hurt. And in that, Pakistan's stand obviously is United States is having close relations with India, isn't it? But that, should it bother Pakistan? On a bilateral issue, it should not. This is between US and Pakistan, as long as it doesn't hurt us directly.
And you're a big promoter of the relations between Pakistan and China, is that correct?
Yes, I am. But I was also a good promoter of relations between Pakistan and United States. So therefore, one has to balance. But therefore, I was going to say bilateral. If Pakistan is not worried about US-India relations, why should the United States worry about Pakistan-China relations? So therefore, we have to be clear on each other's sensitivities and interests.
Okay, the gentleman here.
Thanks to both of you for coming and speaking with all of us. I'm Manak. I'm a student at the School of Management. My question to you was from the perspective of the Indian government. The Indian government has tried to initiate peace talks, and often what has happened is that the administration in India finds it somewhat difficult to engage with the civilian government, because the balance of power lies often with the army in Pakistan. So going forward, like, what would you were, as you absolutely correctly stated, were really pushing for peace with India. Like, how do you see this sort of paradox resolving in the long term?
Well,
thank you.
Are you saying that these peace initiatives were taken now in Prime Minister Modi's time?
That's right. Recently, but also in the past. Like recently, for example, Prime Minister Modi visited Nawaz Sharif, but really nothing could kind of go on. And somehow there's a sense in the Indian side that the civilian administration really doesn't hold power, and it's the army behind this that's making all the decisions behind the scenes.
He's the Indian Prime Minister, Modi.
Yeah, I can see that. I think one has to be very frank in talking when India and Pakistan relations come in. There is no genuine interest of Prime Minister Modi in having peace with Pakistan. And also, if you see the hysteria that is going on in India, in the public of India, generated, encouraged by the government of India, by the party that they are representing, that the people that they are representing. The latest, somebody has just sent me a WhatsApp on a Zara store in Delhi being rampaged by hooligans of all clothes made in Pakistan, being burnt and trampled. And they have threatened every store in India that they'll do the same thing, anyone selling Pakistani goods. Is this a friendly act? And then, no, you are not even prepared to play cricket with Pakistan. You had a kabaddi tournament, you didn't invite Pakistan into that kabaddi tournament. You had our artists, the singers, who are extraordinary and they are loved by your public. They are outcast now. They are not allowed to sing in Pakistan. What kind of attitude is this? What kind of behavior is this? And also let me compare, when you are comparing the two countries, in Pakistan, let me very proudly say, the people are mostly, they can be conservative, they are religious. They have never elected a religious party into government. Never has any religious party got more than 10% votes. But India, who's the Prime Minister now? Who are they representing? They are representing the extremist group of Hindu. They believe in Hindu supremacy. They are denying cow slaughter to anyone who eats cows. I mean, this is a total paradox. I think this is, when you call yourself the biggest secular democracy of the world, I have my very serious doubts. Where is the secularism? Where is the democracy that you are practicing? So I think let us be very frank. And that is where things end. Your strategic thinkers, and I've read many articles, the talk that is going on is the non-military solution to dealing with Pakistan. Because everyone knows that military is no more a solution. We can't go to war, we are both nuclear. So therefore, what is the non-military solution? Economic strangulation, international isolation, weaken their army, internal destabilization. This is what the plan is. So how do we counter it? So let's be very frank. We must have peace in the interest of both India and Pakistan. Not genuinely, I believe in peace, but it cannot be one-handed. And that is exactly where I told Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Vajpayee, magnanimity must come from you. You are the elder, you are the bigger. All the positive connotations will be seen by the world. So I hope the same happens now.
But you said the Indian Prime Minister has no interest in making peace.
No, I don't think so. Yes?
But shouldn't he have an interest in making peace? And shouldn't Pakistan and the United Nations and anyone else involved in this convince him and provide the incentives, the real world incentives for peace?
No, firstly, they don't want anyone to get involved. So even when, I think it was President Donald Trump who said he's going to get involved, they rejected it. They believe in bilateralism, which is very good. In my time, bilateralism, very, very good. But before me and now, what is bilateralism? Okay, we'll solve our problem bilaterally. But they don't want to solve it. They don't want to talk then. So what kind of bilateralism is that?
Good, great. Sir, here in the white.
If you can hear me, I can use it. Oh, sorry, thank you. I'm also from India, but my question is about Kashmir. In 1964, a solution was discussed in India which came to be called the Rajaji formula and in India, and then it made it across the border with Sheikh Abdullah, but Nehru was dead by the time Sheikh Abdullah reached. And as someone interested in the history of it, I wonder if past solutions to Kashmir ever influenced the way you thought of it with Dr. Manmohan Singh, and exactly how close to a solution you got, and what that solution might have looked like. Thank you.
Frankly, let me admit that this is the first time I'm hearing of some solution coming up in 1964. But in my tenure, I spoke to almost everyone. Not almost everyone I did, including everyone in the APHC of Hurriyat Conference, people like Yasin Malik, people like Mir Vaz, Bhatt or Lone, everyone. I spoke to each one of them. What is the solution? Not a single one gave any solution. And on the Pakistan side with our Kashmiri leaders, nobody had a solution. So we were just fighting without putting our heads together towards a solution. So whatever solution came out, I really I don't believe in blowing my own trumpet. It was my brainchild, the 4-point formula that I gave. demilitarization, graduated demilitarization from the line of control and from the cities and towns. Take the military out. Let's disengage. Number two, give maximum self-governance. And in that, their demand on your side of Kashmir is to have an independent judiciary, Supreme Court, independent Supreme Court, independent election commission. Then we got stuck on the line of control. What to do about the line of control? One does understand that one should come out with a out-of-the-hat solution. So it was again my idea to make the line of control irrelevant by opening 6 straight points. From the north, if you see Daraz, if you know that area, Daraz, Kargil and Skardu, and in the south, from Jammu, Suchetgarh to Sialkot, in between there are 4 more points. One we have tried also, Muzaffarabad to Srinagar. So these 6 points for trade and people-to-people contact. Now if you do that, the line of control becomes quite irrelevant. Let people mix. And we try this out for 15 years and then revisit. So this was the line that generally we were trying to follow.
Yes, ma'am, here.
My question, actually, I wanted to go back to something that you said a little while ago. Yes, Pakistanis have never elected a far-right religious group in power, but the blasphemy law is still in place. And my question is, how would you deal with the law itself? It was in place when you were president as well. And how would you deal with the law itself and the onslaught of violence against minorities in Pakistan right now?
You're talking of the blasphemy law?
Yeah.
Yes. We dealt with it in my time. Now, the issue is firstly, it's a sensitive issue, very sensitive with the religious right. Now, we examined this whole thing and we saw that more than 50 countries of the world have blasphemy laws within themselves, including Israel, by the way, has blasphemy law. But ours is the harshest, maybe. So what do we do? Should we remove it altogether? That could have caused a lot of upheaval. Therefore, what we did was to ensure that it is not easy to go for blasphemy. Previously, anybody could accuse anybody else of blasphemy and go to the police station and lodge an, as they say, first inspection report, FIR. But we stopped that nobody can lodge an FIR. You have to go to a court. The court judge has to see whether blasphemy has been committed, then allow an FIR to be lodged. So this was a check against misuse of the law. So the issue is not the law, perhaps, it is the misuse of the law and manipulation of the law. So that needs to be stopped, and which we did to a large extent. And it should be done. But however, unfortunately, it is also the weakness of law enforcement. Maybe the law is there, you'd make laws, but then law enforcer and the adjudicator, if there are weaknesses there, you are not able to implement the law that you are trying to, the improvements that you want to make. So those are also hazards in Pakistan.
Over here, sir.
Thank you. You mentioned that a stable Afghanistan is in the interest of Pakistan. You've also mentioned that Ashraf Ghani is perhaps the last hope for the region. What is Pakistan's role and ultimately perhaps its responsibility to help create stability and peace in Afghanistan?
I think firstly that when we are talking of US forces leaving Afghanistan, I don't see that as a very good option at all. Because if that happens, I am very sure that Taliban will reign supreme there. And they'll take over the whole of Afghanistan. And you have a total void, vacuum ideal for Al-Qaeda and ISIS. We cannot do that. We should not do that. Now, the question is that we have to make sure we have to defeat them. Now, we can defeat them.
But that's not possible, to defeat the Taliban? Is it?
It is possible if we join hands, if we cooperate. But at the moment, as we know, there is no cooperation between US, India, and Pakistan. And I think China should also be involved. China is an important player. They are concerned about terrorism in the western regions of the Uyghur region that they say. So therefore, important players in Afghanistan are really Afghanistan, United States, Pakistan, and China.
But the latest intelligence, I understand, shows that the Taliban are growing and taking over more territory in rural areas, admittedly, but turning that tide with fewer troops. When Obama had 100,000 troops there,
Yes.
there was actually no progress, and his person, who was the coordinator in the White House, General Lute, said in 2011, 2010, it is a house of cards.
Yes.
And you look at it and you talk to the experts, and they say it's a house of cards, and all they might be doing now is reshuffling the cards.
We try to, I think we avoid looking at what blunders we have made. The biggest blunder that I have been talking and telling everyone also was after 9/11, immediately after 9/11, when Afghanistan was attacked, the whole world was together, Pakistan was together, United States attacked, and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were defeated in detail. They ran
Effectively, yes.
Yes, they came into Pakistan. No, they were totally annihilated. They were defeated in detail. They came into Pakistan, into the mountains and cities of Pakistan. And there was a total vacuum in Afghanistan. This vacuum, sir, lasted for over 1.5 years. The resurgence of Afghanistan, of Taliban, started in 2003 or late 2003. And why did it start? Because we had to convert the military victory which we had achieved in Afghanistan, a great military victory in defeating Taliban and Al-Qaeda.
By actually December 2001.
Yes, yes, we did that.
It was astonishing.
Now we had to convert this military victory into a political victory. And what is the political victory, sir? By installing a government in Kabul which is ethnically balanced, meaning thereby Pashtun dominated. Pashtun are over 50% of Afghanistan, and never has anyone other than Pashtuns ruled Afghanistan. And we put in a government which is Panchiri dominated.
Yes, Karzai.
Yes, Karzai was a Pashtun, but I always blame him for that. That he put a Panchiri dominated government. All the important key persons, they recruited 70,000 people in the first batch of army, in Afghan National Army. All were Panchiris, sir. No Pashtun. So that gave rise to the resurgence of Taliban, because Pashtun were alienated. And today also Pashtuns are being there. Therefore, they started gravitating towards the Taliban. So we must learn from this, from the blunder that we did, and maybe try to correct that.
Okay, over here. Sir.
So I'd like to return to the discussion of the crisis in 2002 and how India and Pakistan were kind of in a staring match, almost similar to the US and the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'd want to ask, what was the role, or how significant was the role of the United States and the rest of the international community in trying to destabilize, or not destabilize, de-escalate that situation?
Right.
One or the other, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it was a great role. Let me say a great role played by General Colin Powell. I think he used to ring me up every second or third day, cooling me down. And I think he was doing the same thing probably with Indians. So therefore, he played a very good role in keeping temperatures down.
And Powell was Secretary of State
Yes.
for George
Yes.
W. Bush then.
So I think I give all the credit to him.
And his deputy, Rich Armitage,
Yes.
also played that
Yes.
role. He was kind of the bad cop.
No, he was a very, well, he became very friendly with me, and although I came to know that he's the one who said that we'll bomb Pakistan to Stone Age, but he said no,
If
I
you
never
didn't
said that.
cooperate after
But
9/11. Is that true?
He says he didn't say that.
He didn't say it to you.
No, well, I don't know, because somebody told me he said that. He says he didn't. So we decided, because he became friendly, and I think I really respect him. He's a nice person. He's a very honest talker and a straight talker. So I don't disbelieve what he says. So we thought we should just leave it, close the chapter.
Okay. Whoever's in charge here, give us the hook when you want. But yes, go ahead.
Hi. So my question is, being a Pakistani, there's a sense that educated young citizens who are, say, doing their bachelor's or master's, they don't look at careers in government service. As opposed to here in America, there's a sense that we can become congressmen or whatnot, or presidents even. So what steps do you think are needed to be taken for, educated, well-intentioned young people to go into the government and serve their country? Because currently, like being a former Lumenite and Arabian, I don't see that sense amongst my classmates at all. So if you could elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Yes, I totally agree that there is a social change that has occurred since the 60s and 70s, when that was my time, and where the ideal careers, the best careers were either come to the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, or join the CSP cadre, government service, or become engineer or doctor. That is all. There were no other careers. Now, with passage of time in the world, there are so many careers open. Banking, chartered accountancy, name it, business administration is gained so much. So therefore, people have now gone towards other careers. And military, charm of military and the chivalry and the beauty of the beautiful uniforms of the military, etc., are no more there, which were there. I joined because I wanted to wear that beautiful uniform. And so it has changed. I think the social attitudes have changed all over the world, I think. Military is not very popular anywhere. However, in Pakistan, it is still, military is popular still. We've got a volunteer army. There are innumerable number of youngsters volunteering to come to the army. But yes, from the social strata, while in my time it was middle class, upper middle class, now it is lower middle class people coming. So there's a social change which has taken place. We shouldn't regret that. We shouldn't be despondent. When they join the army, they become better officers, better human beings, and more disciplined human beings. So I think the social change is to the positive, I think.
Okay. Ma'am, last question here. Yes, with your hand up. Yes.
So Balochistan was left out of this conversation, and it often is left out of state policy. So I feel the need to ask you that you chose to engage with Baloch nationalism with military action. You're known to have said things like, they won't even know what hit them. And the presumption was that this will cause the Baloch nationalists to cower into submission. But looking back, that hasn't really happened. Since Bukti's assassination, we've only seen more conflict. So now, do you feel like if you were to revisit your legacy in the region, you would do things differently?
Yeah. I think there's total lack of understanding of Balochistan. Where are you from?
I'm from Lahore.
From?
Lahore.
From Lahore. Have you been to Balochistan?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I know every inch of Balochistan. I know the tribal environment of Balochistan. I was there in the 70s. I have been in the Murray area, which is the most dangerous. I've been in the Bukti area where you are talking of he won't know what has struck him. So I know who's Bukti, who's Murray, who's Mengal, and I know how Balochistan demography is. Now let me tell you, we think that if I said something to Mr. Nawab Akbar Bukti, that is what that message was meant for. What is he? He was anti-Pakistan, totally anti-Pakistan. His grandson is Bramda Bukti, who goes to India. I know that. He goes to India. I've seen photographs of Bramda Bukti being received in India. So he is being helped. His tribal followers, who are limited in numbers. How many Buktis are there? And do you know the biggest sub-tribe of the Bukti is Kalpat Bukti. Kalpat Buktis, this Akbar Bukti had caused genocide. He pushed the entire sub-tribe of 50,000-60,000 people out of Balochistan. And it was I who brought them back into their lands. So you think this Bramda Bukti cannot go to his area? I challenge him to go to Dera Bukti. He can't. So let us be clear, what is Balochistan, what is happening? Half of Balochistan is Pashtun. They are all very, very Pakistani, 50%. South of Balochistan is Brahui, the coastal belt is all Pakistani. There's Gwadar, Ormara, Pasni, all this area. Now we are talking of 3 tribes who create the problem. The Murray, Bukti, Mengal. How many are there, by the way? 300,000? Okay, 500,000 people? And how many are really anti-Pakistan within those tribes? The whole tribe is not. So please understand, this is a vastly exaggerated thing. But when you rise against the government, you have to be dealt with. If you are denying movement to the frontier corps, which is the government second line force, into your area, you're putting checkposts and checking them, should that be allowed by any government? No, it cannot be.
So this proves that all politics is local, right? Because you two and a few people understand all of this. To some of it's like talking about who's going to be the 8th member of the county council in Louisville, Kentucky. But you know it. You've been there. And the last question, I just want to flow down.
What I want to say actually, because there are other people, certainly she raised a point about Balochistan which had not been discussed. But people, especially the educated class, they get carried away by these elements that Balochistan is being suppressed. Nobody is suppressing. There are terrorists there. There are anti-state elements who have to be dealt with by any government. And even now, if somebody is, they have to be dealt with. And one shouldn't deny that. If there is any anti-state element working against Pakistan, he has to be dealt with.
So if you think of this as a Pakistani citizen, the people back in Pakistan, what's the next stage of good for a majority of the Pakistani people? What do they need now?
The core issue, good leadership. From that flows good governance. And when you say good governance, it has to be corruption-free and nepotism-free. If you can manage this, Pakistan has all the resources and all the potential to stand on its own feet, be self-reliant and progressive. And the proof of it is, frankly, in my time in those 9 years, from any point of view of development of the state and welfare of the people, we were rising. How did that happen? Same people, same resources. So therefore, my short answer to your question, good leadership is required, corruption-free, nepotism-free governance by a good leader.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.